Look, Mom. I drew our family in school today. Oh, wow. I didn't have time to finish James' face. Carrie drew her two mothers. She said they are married to each other. Our teacher rejected her picture, saying Carrie's mothers are living in sin. That made Carrie cry. What does that mean? Your and Carrie's teacher has a common view of gays and lesbians as sinners or even diseased because of their sexuality, but that is based mainly on religious bigotry. Thousands of years ago, when most of the world's religions were being founded and spread, most people lived in tribal groups. Marriages were usually not just relationships between individuals, but also alliances between families or even nations. So fathers would often arrange for their children to marry members of other families, and then those children would be expected to produce the next generation as adults. But the problem was that gays and lesbians couldn't have children with each other, so they were useless for procreation. Because the founders of the great religions and the writers of the scriptures of these religions mistakenly believed that people could choose their sexuality, harsh punishments were often called for in an effort to force young people to avoid being gay or lesbian and try to be straight instead. Today, we understand how foolish and ignorant those people were, and that's why prejudice against LGBT people is fading away. What can we do to help Carrie? Her rights are being violated by the teacher. If they haven't done so already, Carrie's mothers need to consult a lawyer and try to take legal action against the school. Let me talk to Carrie and her mothers so they can know what to do. I told my mother about your situation with the homophobic teacher, Carrie. I hope that was okay. Yes, thank you. My mothers have decided to pull me out of that school and have me homeschooled. Why? I thought homeschooling was for religious bigots. You know, to protect little kids' minds from secular influences. Homeschooling can also promote secular ideals in a hostile religious environment. We found out that the principal of the school is the teacher's uncle, and they both attend the same fundamentalist church. No wonder that school is so messed up. Well, I'm not leaving the school. That would only make things worse for those left behind. Debbie, Carrie, I have an idea. If we joined a religious group that championed LGBT rights, we could then argue that our own religious freedom was being threatened by anti-LGBT actions at the school. There is indeed such a religious group, the Unitarian Universalist Association. I read about it on the internet, but there is no UU church in our town. Then maybe we should start one. Or at least have UU meetings in our private homes and invite young people with open minds to visit and learn about UU values. Aren't Unitarian Universalists also Christians, Mother Jessica? I don't believe in any sort of God at all. Nor does Debbie. That's the best part. They evolved from Christianity, but they allow you to believe whatever religion fits your needs, or even no religion at all, and they won't shun you for being atheist or LGBT. They also fight all forms of bigotry through their teachings and actions. Then it's settled. Let's contact the UU and ask them to help us form a new UU church for this town. People my and Carrie's age need a new place to act as a refuge from the bigoted community we live in around us. Thank you for coming to see us, Mr. Husband. I am Lucy Sims, and my wife is Jessica Sims and our daughter is Carrie Sims. We have been reading your blog and were impressed by your many statements on it about politics, religion and science. We were especially excited to learn that you lived only a few hundred miles away. You are literally the closest thing we have to a Unitarian Universalist evangelist.
You are most welcome, but I prefer to call myself an advocate, not an evangelist. Anyway, you and your wife say you want to create a Unitarian Universalist fellowship in this town.
Yes. Unfortunately, there are only a few people in this town that are likely to support a Unitarian Universalist church, and we don't have the money to purchase a church building. How should we proceed?
Even in the Bible, Jesus was quoted as saying, "If 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am among them." You don't need an actual church building to have a UU fellowship. You can have meetings in a private home, in a city park, or even at a restaurant or other place of business that is willing to host your group.
We will start by having the meetings in this home, but what can we use to teach lessons?
I have brought a dozen issues of the UU World, the official magazine of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I have also brought several books from which you can draw ideas to teach lessons, or at least start discussions over. And here is a list of websites you can look up to get more ideas for lessons.
This looks exactly like what our daughter needs. But how is it possible for a single religious organization to have Christians, Jews, Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, and pagans all together? That is simply unheard of.
The Unitarian Universalist Association was formed in 1961 by the merger of two liberal religious groups, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America. They were both originally Christian, but over time, Universalist ideas became acceptable to the Unitarians and vice versa. Unitarians deny the Trinity because it is irrational, and as time passed they tended to reject more and more irrational dogmas. And Universalists reject the idea that only one religion can bring salvation to people. By the 1950s, both denominations had almost the same spiritual ideals, so they joined up. Basically, UUs are humanist, meaning their faith is based on human needs, not on what a God supposedly demands of us. If individuals among UUs decide to believe in a God, that is their right and their business. It is pointless to argue about who may be right or wrong and break away from each other over issues of doctrine that cannot be settled through the gathering and analysis of empirical data.
Thanks again. I think you have given us enough resources to begin the new fellowship. Debbie Smith, come here. We have to talk, now. What is it, Miss Jenkins? I just heard that you, Carrie, and your parents have filed a lawsuit against the school for discrimination. What is the meaning of this? Isn't it obvious? You totally disrespected Carrie and her mothers because of your homophobia. You made her and them seem less than human. That's why Carrie is no longer here. And why are you bringing it up to me? I wasn't going to start a fight over it, especially since Carrie is gone. Aren't you glad you won? I would have won if Carrie and her mothers were not living that sinful lifestyle now. Well, from my point of view, it is your lifestyle and desire to force it on us that is the problem. I know you are a Christian. Did I ever say you shouldn't be one? No. I merely said it was wrong to make Christianity and the Bible the standard for this school. My mother, Carrie's mothers and I are atheists, and our parents pay taxes to support the school, so it should be secular. If we wanted to be preached at, we'd go to a private Christian school. That's enough out of you. As of now, you are dismissed from my class. Leave, now. For merely disagreeing with you? You can't do that. I can indeed, and my uncle, the principal, will back me up. How dare you threaten to expel my daughter? You are only making things worse for everyone. Debbie doesn't respect my authority. And you don't respect the U.S. Constitution. It is people like you, using the Bible as a weapon to hurt people, that made me leave Christianity when I was Debbie's age. And I've never regretted it. The Bible is the greatest book in the world and its teachings are the foundation of Western civilization. How can you just dismiss it and its sublime moral teachings? I have read nearly all of the Bible, and I know it is not as good as many people think. Have you read Numbers chapter 31? It includes these things, and Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe. They warred against Midian, as the Lord commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of their slain. And they also killed Balaam the son of Beer with the sword. And the people of Israel took captive the women of Midian and their little ones, and they took as plunder all their cattle, their flocks, and all their goods. And Moses was angry with the officers of the army, who had come from service in the war. Moses said to them, Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known man by lying with him. But all the young girls who have not known man by lying with him keep alive for yourselves. And that is why I do not want you to teach the Bible as the Word of God to my daughter. Any God who would have his worshippers do things as horrible as what the Nazis did in World War II is not worthy of our allegiance. You owe us an apology. I guess I was wrong to stay in that school. I feared this would happen. Those bigots will never be satisfied until the whole world is just like them. And that would be like the Dark Ages. So what happened, Mom? Am I expelled? Actually, no. Miss Jenkins finally agreed to give you a written apology first thing tomorrow morning. How did you manage that? I just proved that I know the Bible a hell of a lot better than that arrogant teacher. It is hilarious just how ignorant most Christians are about their so-called Word of God. Most churches only teach a highly sanitized version of the Bible. When we form our own Sunday school for Unitarian Universalist kids, we will teach the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth about religion. For now, you will remain in the school, and I would suggest you tell your classmates about Unitarian Universalism and encourage them to come attend our fellowship. As you wish, but I don't think our problems will be over anytime soon.
After Jessica and Lucy filed their lawsuit against Debbie and Carrie's school for discrimination, they began receiving on their cell phones a ton of hateful messages, including death threats.
I just found out why we are getting so many attacks on our phones. The principal of that school actually revealed our home address and our personal phone numbers in a public Facebook post. And he urged his online friends to attack us, who he called liberal atheist and lesbian intruders.
Why the damned bastard? He is only giving us more reason to sue his ass off.
What are we going to do? I really don't care what those bullies do to me, but what about our daughter? Remember when she got beaten up by another girl at the school? She didn't deserve that. We must protect her. Mother Lucy, I am more than willing to help you fight the bigots. We are a family, so anything that affects any one of us affects us all.
I appreciate that, Carrie. When I was a child, I and my own parents faced harassment issues of our own.
Why? You couldn't have been out as a lesbian or an atheist back then, were you?
No, but what happened was that my father scored much higher on an employee evaluation than his rivals, who were all white men, so he got promoted over them. So the other men sent my parents hateful letters. Then one night, someone actually blasted out our front windows with a shotgun. And we never learned who actually did it.
Oh my God, how horrible.
My point is that bigotry is bigotry, no matter where it comes from or who it is aimed at. As a black person, I had to deal with racism. As lesbians, Jessica and I must deal with homophobia.
I once argued online with a Jewish person about Israel. He claimed that opposition to Zionism was anti-Semitic. I said that oppression of the Palestinians was Islamophobic, which is no better.
That Jewish person's claim is debunked the moment you can produce any Jew who does not support Israel. And there are quite a few such people, actually.
I just got off the phone with my mother. She is urging us to move back to Boston and live with her so we will be safe. Mother Jessica, are you sure running away is the best option? Like Debbie and her mother said to us, sometimes you have to stay and fight not only for our rights, but the rights of all that may be oppressed or discriminated against. Carrie, I just don't want you to be hurt again. After what nearly happened to Debbie at school last week, I fear things may get even worse. I understand now that small towns like this have always been hotbeds of bigotry and ignorance. In a big city, there is more diversity and therefore more support for people like us.
But even in Boston, there are racists like the ones who attacked my family decades ago. And if we leave, what about Sandy, Debbie and James? They will still be facing anti-atheist bigotry, so they should have our support too.
We all want to do what is right, and sometimes that involves taking risks and making sacrifices. So I say let us stay and fight. Why are you here? If it's to defend what Miss Jenkins tried to do.
Absolutely not. I may be a Christian and even a member of Miss Jenkins' church, but I'm on your side now. I have come to see you as a fellow human being, and knowing all the hate you have been subjected to makes me wonder what is so great about a religion that allows such things. Just being an atheist and a lesbian doesn't do any real harm, I can understand that.
Thank you. That is so good to hear. So would you consider becoming atheist too?
No, I still think Christianity is the right religion for me. My point was that many Christians disagree with people like Miss Jenkins and her uncle. We are not always driven to preach to people like you that have no interest in our religion.
Jason, since you are more open-minded, perhaps you could attend our new Unitarian Universalist fellowship when we start our meetings this coming Sunday. UUs are not all atheists like me and Debbie. As a Christian UU, one could still read the Bible and even revere Jesus without endorsing bigotry against anyone else.
Indeed, Jesus preached love and respect for others. He did not endorse hate against those who were different. It's possible that later Christian leaders got it wrong, so I will reject the homophobia of the church I was brought up in. Expect to see me with you and Debbie next Sunday. The first actual gathering of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the town is underway.
Welcome, everyone, to our first Unitarian Universalist service. We do not have any hymnals yet, but I found some poems we can read to you instead as we proceed. Here is the first one: all that you touch you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower. Let us light our chalice now. It's actually a large candle, but it will do until we get an actual chalice later. And here is another poem, written by Molly Brewer. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you, that everything is okay right now. That there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit, and so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker: there is a love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love. All water is one water, by Mel Hoover and Rose Eddington. Water unites us. All water is one water, shape-shifting as it goes on in its unending cycle. The stream we gather by unites us with all the waters of the world, for all of life depends on water. That's why this common, everyday element on which our very lives depend is sacred. In our thankfulness for water, let us remember to honor, cherish, and care for it, for our own lives, for all life touched by water, and for those who come after us.
This is an official statement of the UU condemning violence against Asian Americans. The Unitarian Universalist Association joins leaders across the country in decrying the recent surge of hate crimes against Asians and Asian Americans. In this last year, violence and verbal harassment targeting this community have been exacerbated by anti-Asian rhetoric and blame. We call on federal, state, and local governments at every level to send the clear message that such actions will not be tolerated. We are in solidarity with victims, survivors, and families who have suffered loss and pain. This country has a shameful history of racist acts towards the Asian community. It includes the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and the U.S. incarceration of approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans during the Second World War. Long-standing racist tropes about Asians as other are deeply embedded in the national consciousness. These stereotypes fuel current discrimination, and we all need to reflect on how they can subtly shape unconscious bias or even outright hatred and violence. This recent rise in anti-Asian violence has been incited in large measure by the xenophobic rhetoric and misinformation about the coronavirus pandemic that was spread by the previous president. In contrast, it was gratifying to hear President Biden declare in his recent speech, "It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop." We know these acts of violence are rooted in the same white supremacy and hate that takes the lives of Black, Indigenous, and Latinx people. White supremacy culture works hard to pit marginalized communities against each other to prevent the formation of powerful coalitions. We must condemn media narratives that cast this as a Black versus Asian issue. We need to affirm the interconnectedness of Black and Asian communities and all people who are against hatred, and recognize that this discrimination was born of the extremism that hurts us all.
Thank you, Lucy. Before we continue, are there any questions from visitors here?
Yes. Are there any special rituals or declarations that one must make to become a Unitarian Universalist? I remember being baptized when I was 7 years old.
That seems awfully young to make a commitment to a religion, Jason. It is common knowledge that children cannot consent to anything before Debbie, please don't be rude.
No, Mrs. Smith, it's all right. Debbie is actually right. I got baptized because that's what I was expected to do in a Baptist family. It is only now that I feel like I am making actual choices about religion.
Since this is a fellowship without a church building, we can forego any special rituals for admitting new members at this time. For now, all are welcome and should not be treated as outsiders.
There was a knocking on the door, and when it was answered,
I am surprised to see you here. Shouldn't you be at your own church? I guess you didn't hear, but I had an argument with Mrs. Smith last month that really opened my eyes. Before I got to know any of you, I had all sorts of assumptions about atheists, LGBT people, Christians like myself, and even the Bible that I had never questioned before. I actually looked up Numbers 31 and read that chapter all the way through. It was sickening to look at. I was indeed never taught such passages as a child, and if I had been, I doubt I'd be so committed to my religion. There was a reason why the Catholic Church for over 1,000 years never allowed the Bible to be translated from Latin to the languages of the common people. That's how scammers operate. Truth should never be hidden, but shown for all to see. If the Christian leaders in the Middle Ages really thought of the Bible as God's infallible word, why hide it from the people? Everything you have said so far is true, but how can I be expected now to just give up what has defined my life for so long? We don't expect any such thing from you. All we ask is that you learn to tolerate people who are different from you, just as you would expect us to tolerate your Christianity. It was never about you being a Christian, but about using your religion as an excuse to be bigoted. That should be ended, forever. And on that note, let us extinguish our chalice and end the service. We can discuss more later over lunch. Debbie, can you recite the closing words? We close with this affirmation of hope by Loretta Williams. We, bearers of the dream, affirm that a new vision of hope is emerging. We pledge to work for that community in which justice will be actively present. We affirm that there is struggle yet ahead. Yet we know that in the struggle is the hope for the future. We affirm that we are co-creators of the future, not passive pawns. And we stand united in affirmation of our hope and vision of a just and inclusive society. We affirm the unity of all persons. We affirm brotherhood and sisterhood that allows us to touch upon each other's humanity. We affirm a unity that opens our eyes, ears, and hearts to see the different but common forms of oppression, suffering, and pain. Yet we are one in the image of God, and we celebrate our hopes for human unity. Within ourselves and within the gathered community, we will discover the strength not to hide in indifference. Affirming that hope, publicly expressed, energizes and enables us to move forward. Together we pledge action to transcend barriers, be they racial, political, economic, social, or religious. We pledge to make our tomorrows become our todays.
Thank you so much. I have learned so much this morning. I will definitely be returning for more, later, during the lunch period.
I'd like to make you an offer. If you agree to drop the lawsuit against my school, I promise that in the future I won't discriminate against Carrie or Debbie. I consulted a lawyer and he confirmed that my actions against them were actually improper and thus the school district would lose money. Please allow Carrie to attend the school again. Carrie, what do you think? I think it would be better for you to stay connected with most of your peers. Homeschooling for you is only an option of last resort. I will trust your judgment here. Even if I do face hostility at the school, I can endure it. I told you that running away doesn't help and I meant it. Very well. Miss Jenkins, you have yourself a deal. Keep your word to us and there will be harmony between us from now on.
And now the story is complete. We hope you enjoyed it.